Hello, ladies. As she said, my name is Angela Habibullah. It's a very unique name, so you'll say, I remember that strange name. But anyway, I'm so happy to be here with this awesome panel here. Abby, Ellen, who else we have? Sandra and Martha. Thank you, ladies. So we're going to get into the questions, but let me just say two loves. I love women because I am one, and I love cycling. I'm so happy to be here with you guys, and we're going to have a good time tonight. So we're going to start off with the first question. I'm going to start with, is it okay if I start with you, Abby? Okay. And so, Abby, I'm going to ask you, tell us about, do you have a role model as far as cycling goes? Who's your role model? Or who are? You may have more than one.
My Aunt Liz and my Uncle Dave.
Okay, and so I need you to speak loud enough so that everybody can hear you. Can everybody hear? Okay, so I'm going to act. I used to be a teacher, so I need you to use the inside voice, but speak loud enough so that all these wonderful ladies, they're so excited to hear you. Speak loud enough so they can hear you.
My aunt and my uncle are my role models.
And are they cyclists?
Yep.
Oh, okay. And so they inspired you to ride? You like what they're doing? And so you said, I want to be like that?
Yeah.
All right. What about you, Ellen?
This is the one question I feel like I didn't study for very well.
Well, no, you don't have to study. Just talk from the heart.
I would say that my role models are people who ride as themselves, who come as they are. Not to steal Abby's answer, but Liz rides exactly as she comes to work. Like, she'll ride in this, she'll ride in how it is. But anyone who's kind of courageous and getting out there and saying, I'm ready to try this, I want to get out on it. I think there are some great Instagram followers that I like to just kind of see them getting out there and doing the thing instead of feeling like they have to be a certain way about how they ride.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because when you see people doing things that you like and you say, wait a minute, if they can do it, maybe I can do it.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Okay, and what about you, Sandra? Some of your...
So when I was young, I'd say it was my dad. My dad encouraged anything and everything that we wanted to do. So he, if we wanted to ride bikes, he was out there and he was giving us advice on how to do it. And, the gravel road that we lived on, it was rock road. It wasn't gravel. So we had to walk our bikes down to where there was asphalt so that we could ride, and he was always giving advice about, look where you're going, look behind you. And then probably later on, when I started riding again in my 50s, probably one of the people that gave me a lot of good advice role model was Carolyn Helmkamp, which some of you know. She's passed on since, but she was just absolutely, a wonderful person, and, gave out advice. Whether you wanted it or not, she gave it.
But I'm sure it was helpful advice.
Most of it was helpful, yes.
Well, thank you. And so, Martha, what about you? Who are some of your role models?
Well, I think women that I met on tours and trips that were willing to share their knowledge. I've ridden my whole life, but when I started doing longer distances, you would meet people, and their willingness to answer question after question. But I also then have to say probably one of my biggest role models was also Carolyn. We went on many, many long trips together, and she taught me so much, and we rode a lot together. Imo Tyson is another one. There were older women who had ridden for years and years and years, and without much, to do. They rode in cut-off shorts, and they didn't have, the cycle gear, and they were great people, and they shared their knowledge. So,
well, thank you all for sharing that. So let me ask. Sometimes for newbies, because I haven't been riding that long, cycling can appear to be really intimidating. And so, how important is it to have role models and have them encourage you and let you know that you too can do this? How important is that? And anybody can start off with that. I don't want to just.
Well, I think it's very important, and I think it's important to have people that encourage you to be the kind of writer you want to be. There are many people who will be very willing to tell you how you should ride, how you should, gear out your bike, that sort of thing. And, having somebody who's got some experience, but who's also can help you really find your own ride is really important, because we all ride different. We all have different goals. We all have different, things we like to do.
So that's a relief. There's no one way.
No.
I mean, seriously.
No, definitely
seriously. There's no one. You can be a road cyclist. You can love gravel. It's your way, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think
For real, that's a relief.
I just wanted to add on to that, Martha, to say I think that's what helps more people stay in cycling is when you have someone who's just sitting there saying, I see you as the cyclist who you are. You can improve this, you can do that. Like I remember just being on group rides at different points in time, and if there's a woman there who's like taking the time to say, I see you, I'm here to ride with you, I'm gonna stay with you this whole time, like that is what will encourage me to stick around and like come back to that particular ride and say, I'm gonna try it again. I wanna implement whatever it is that she just taught me. When Liz asked us about like what is our advice, like if I wanted to get super tactical, I remember so specifically on one group ride, it's like the route went down a hill and then it curved, and she just made sure at the top of that hill is like if you're going to like we're gonna turn right, so make sure your left foot is down so you can like push out against it. And like I think of that every time I turn right going down a hill, right? It's like make sure your foot, and I think of her as just someone who like took me aside and said, this is really important, and I want you to be safe, and I want you to have a good time.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. When I first became interested in cycling, I would watch this male cycling group, Major Taylor, and I would think to myself, I could never keep up with those guys. I mean, I just can't do it. So I found a women's group, and so when I joined the women's group, I said, oh my God, I can do this. And they were just so interested and caring, and I think that's why it's important for us as women, not that we're excluding men, but it's important for us to have that support and support each other.
So Martha and I travel together a lot, and we've done several tours. Martha could outride me at least double the mileage if she wanted to, but my parameters are, this is as far as I want to go at any one day, and I've got the parameters. Martha's like, that's good, so because I have absolutely no desire to ride fast or long distance. It's not me. I ride for fun. I ride to see things. I ride from place to place for errands, whatever, and, that's fine for me.
Again, and we need to hear more of that because, guys, I'm here, and as you guys know, I'm trying to, well, you may not know, but I'm trying to encourage more people of color to get involved with this sport. And that's a concern. I can't ride fast. Look, I'm not going to be in the Tour de France. I'm not. And so we need to hear people like you to say, it's okay. You're still a cyclist. You can ride just because you like it. You can ride at your speed. It's okay. And again, I'm an advocate for women, so we need this. We need this. What about you, Abby? What about, say, wait, what was the question, right? So how do you feel, Abby, about a girl cycling, and do you see boys out cycling?
No, I don't really, but I do.
Now speak loud enough so they can hear you.
I don't really see it in my neighborhood, but I do see it on like the streets in the highway.
And so as a girl who you like to ride, right?
Yeah.
And do you tell me about your riding? When you're riding, are you trying to race? Are you just riding just for the joy of it because you like it? What are you thinking about when you're on your bike out riding?
I just try to do it for fun, and sometimes when my friends are over, I like to race them.
So you do it for fun and you race your friends. Now that really sounds.
A little competitive spirit comes out.
But what I hear is the most important thing is for fun. You really enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And would you encourage other women and girls that, hey, if you like this and it's a fun thing, you should do it?
Yes, I would.
Okay. All right. We're going to move right along here. So let me ask, how has your bike life changed over the years?
So I think one of the biggest changes, as far as how I ride and what I do when I'm riding, are pretty much the same. I always, as a kid, would ride because I was going to meet friends, or I was running errands for my mother because my mother didn't drive. So, you know, and kind of just a lot of social things. So that part is the same. However, I never wore a helmet, which is something that I do now. I didn't have reflective gear. I didn't have lights on my bike. I mean, I don't think there was a single thing that was really safe about it, other than maybe more people paid attention when I was younger than they do on the road now.
Well, let me ask you this, Sandy. Do you think it's because I remember, ladies, although I'm only 25, but I remember riding my bike as a child. I didn't have a helmet either.
Oh, no one did.
But I don't think we had as many cars on the street. I don't
I would
think the
agree with
cars
that.
were as fast. And I don't think we had as many distractions.
The distractions
Yeah.
is what really, I think, is the issue these days.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot about the built environment too that has really enabled cars to go faster no matter where they are because you're in a hurry, and that's what then pushes cyclists off the road. So I know that there's really good work being done in Kansas City and other cities, but like that is where, and I have this conversation with my mother, who I grew up in Lee Summit, which is not like you're gonna have a bike lane on every road there too, and she'd be frustrated because she feels like she didn't know what to do when there's a cyclist on the road. And she says, well, until you can get more cyclists there, then how am I supposed to learn to drive with a cyclist there? And I said, okay, so how am I supposed to be comfortable being on the road if you're not sure what to do with me? And so it's very much this like a catch-22 of sorts. So like the more and more that we could enable confident cyclists and educated drivers and educated cyclists, I will lump myself in there as someone who has possibly yelled at drivers, but it's, you know, it's a two-way street, no pun intended, of understanding what everybody's trying to do here. And I think it was that just there were probably more people, there were more kids riding around for for utility when you were younger, whereas like I remember riding around as a kid for fun and for like getting into trouble or for like a recreation sort of thing, but not really going, like, I wasn't riding my bike to a store to go get groceries.
Well, I did because
Right.
mom wasn't walking there.
Right.
But, you know, the big difference was, you know, at 16, I didn't have a car. I only had a bike. So what I did, I pretty much did. And then, you know, I did get my driver's license, and I was allowed a car one night a week. And I couldn't argue with my brother over which night it was going to be, or we didn't get it. So
It's rude. That's rude of him.
he was older.
I know. I could tell. I had one of those. I have one of those.
Martha, how has your bike life changed over the years?
Well, personally, I mean, throughout the life, I rode when my kids were little. We didn't have all of the cool stuff. We didn't have the trailers. They rode in the little bike seat in the back without a helmet, I might say.
Don't tell my kid or he'll get ideas.
And then there was, again, kind of that period of when they were not old enough to really go too far, but they were too heavy to ride in the carrier. we kind of quit. But then when my kids got old enough, we rode mostly trails. And then as my kids left home, that was probably when my cycling life changed the most because I had more time. I think that's got to be a struggle for younger families. And then I rode all the time. And then I started doing long distance touring, but I also commuted and did errands. So I just rode a lot more. But again, I think, that's the nice thing. You can continue it throughout your life, but different needs at different periods of your life are going to probably change, frankly, how much time you have. I think that's a big thing. It was for me.
And how has cycling affected, or what impact does cycling have on your other parts in your life or other areas of your life?
Mental health.
So what do you talk more about that? Because
For me, I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know. I love to cycle, and I always told myself if I ever got on a ride, and there'd be times you're like, oh, I don't want to ride. I think if you get out there and you've been on the bike for 5 minutes and you really don't want to ride, turn around and go home. And it's never happened. But for me, and again, going through some things, as I went through a divorce and some things like that, biking was really, I felt like it was a huge help to me for my mental health, and it was a social thing. It was a huge part of my social life. So
I hear you saying it was like really a saving grace. You could,
absolutely.
Your mood may not initially be, I don't want to do this, but your mood followed your actions, right? Once you get on that bike, you're like, you know what, life is not as bad as I thought it was. I mean, really, I'm speaking for me, you guys, because I know. Would you agree with that? I mean, because that's how I feel sometimes. Oh God, I've had a horrible day, and life is just beating me up. But you get on that bike and it's heaven again, right? Yeah. Especially when you're coming down those hills. This is what living is about, right?
I would commute. I lived in London, UK for about 4 years, and that bike commute is very different from a Kansas City commute. But I remember, I would leave the office so mad about some stupid email, and then I make it home, and then by the time I got home, it's I don't think I even remember what this was about. It's just I've worked it out, I've pedaled it out, and I feel better now. It's I got to yell at some bus, and I got to yell at something else, and then it's just you got to blow the steam off that way, and it's just it's super good for mental health.
So for me, you just said London. So in September, my husband and I were gone for a month with our bikes, and we started in London and we ended in Brussels. So for me, it's I absolutely love traveling by bike because it's slow. You see anything and everything you want to see. If there's a little flower, you can just stop on a dime and, take a picture. I mean, I can't tell you how many pictures Martha and I take when we're on trips, and it's a record. I think one of my husband's and my bike trip, I think we went all of 3.1 miles before we stopped to take a picture. It's so pleasant.
We've stopped within a half a mile.
I know. Oh, look, a quarter mile later, there's something we need to take a picture of. So, it's absolutely fun to do. It's a different type of vacation. And pretty much, if I'm not on a self-contained bike tour, a lot of times the bike's on the car and it's still involved in a vacation.
Yeah, it's the two of you plus your bike. I like that it was the two of you and your bikes went to the place. It wasn't we took our bikes too. It's a group effort. Four went.
Oh, and that is so important. Those are the kinds of things that I think we should share on social media, because just hearing what you're saying about, you notice things that you don't normally notice in a car. Has this tree always been here? Has this flower? And that is just something that, until you get out there and get on that bike and experience things like that, you just have no clue, right? So let me ask Abby. Abby, when you're riding your bike for fun, do you notice things that you may not necessarily notice when you're in the car?
Not really. It's
Well, tell me when you're riding your bike. Tell me what you're thinking about and how it makes you feel.
it makes me feel happy a lot and kind of tired after.
It makes you feel happy and then tired.
Yeah.
And I bet you have a good night's sleep, don't you?
Yep.
Yep, that's good. So would you, do you think cycling is a good thing and you would encourage more girls and ladies and women to ride?
Yes, I would.
Why?
Because all genders should be included in everything, even if other genders say they can't do it, or if they can, either way, they should include
Did
it.
you all hear it, Abby? I like that, Abby. All genders, all people should be included in all things, right? Is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yes.
And if you want to do it, you should be able to do it, right?
Yep.
And if you have the desire to do it, then do it. Is that what you're saying, Abby?
Yes.
All right, Abby. I like that. I like that a lot. So what advice would you all give to younger riders? Someone who says, you know what, because let me ask. These are some concerns that I hear. Cycling is expensive.
Doesn't have to be.
And when you talk more about that.
So, as far as getting a bike, when you first get one, you may not know exactly what you want, but there's places like Revolve is a place that you can get a bike for a reasonable cost. They also have a safety course you can take. They do various things. So, you can start out there, and then if you decide, this is not for me, you haven't really spent a lot of money. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a kit because, I think these leggings or whatever I have on, they're from like TJ Maxx or one of those places for, $12.99, whatever, $11.99. And, a shirt that I did buy at Talbot's, but it was about 80% off. And these are things I wear wherever.
Anyway.
Yeah. And I ride my bike with this. So I know when I travel, I pretty much can ride my bike all day long and go out to dinner. Just, throw on a jacket and there you go, or a scarf and, that type of thing. So it doesn't have to be expensive.
I would agree with that. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
So I have a almost 3-year-old son, and so I'm thinking a lot towards like I'm gonna have to buy him a bike when he's 48 inches tall and 50 inches tall, like all of these different heights, and so like that starts in my brain already to add up. And so I think remembering that if you have parent friends in your life and they're riding bikes, like their kids have done that too. Like, do they still have one in their garage? Do they still have do they know a person? Is there a Craigslist thing going on? I think it's true. It's like you kind of need to have that entry into it to know whether or not you want to eventually start to spend more if you want to, but also you don't have to. Like, if you want to ride in Latour, sure. You can go and you can buy all the kit, but you should probably just get a sponsorship. But it's just like, there's just these different levels of getting into it that don't have to break the bank. I think I just do want to acknowledge that it feels like it can. I think it feels very much like there are accessibility blockers there. And so I don't want to sit there and tell you, no, it's not expensive, but I want to say it's like there are creative ways to solve those problems.
Well, in fact, I would encourage people not to go out and buy an expensive bike. We've all, I have some bike mistakes in my past. So, I would really encourage. The balance is you want somebody to be on a bike that's good enough that they're right. Because if you're on a real crap bike, it's not going to be very fun. So you got to be on a bike that's good enough they can get a feel for it. But yeah, because you don't know. You may not want. We went through the mountain bike and then the hybrid and then the road bike. It's there's kind of this succession, and could have saved some money.
That's how I wound up with a really nice, my first bike was technically a hand-me-down, but it was a really nice bike because my father-in-law wanted my mother-in-law to ride with him, and she kept complaining about the bike. And so he finally said, well, let's get you a nice one. And then it turns out it wasn't about the bike. She just didn't want to go. So it sat in their garage. So it was an expensive mistake for them. And it wound up, luckily for me, that's the bike that I wound up really getting into cycling on and just riding around. But it's because it was so nice. Like, how do you not love it when you're flying around on this really light bike? But I think the sentiment is, it's like you don't, and probably shouldn't buy something super expensive if you're just getting into it for the first time.
I know when I was little, so I think I had a Schwinn, but I rode that thing, God knows how many miles. I'd ride out to the lake and go out to the beach and then come home, and that was 40 miles round trip. So no problem with that. But then I spent my money and I bought a Raleigh 10-speed, which at the time was absolutely the top thing. And, I loved that bike. It was stolen about 8 years later, but
It's a pretty good run for a bike.
yeah.
I'll say, just as a parent too, like, kid peer pressure is probably like one of the best incentives to get your kid to ride someone else's bike. This actually just worked for my kid the other day at the park. It's like, well, he sees his kid, like this other kid's scooter. He doesn't know how to ride a scooter, but he sees that other kid. It's like, well, sure, you can ride that kid's scooter. Of course, go try it. Do you like riding your bike, or do you like trying to ride someone else's bike?
I like to ride my bike
Okay.
because my neighbors still have training wheels, so.
Your neighbor still has training wheels? And so, but you don't have training wheels? Oh, my God.
We all learn at different
my God.
speeds.
Yes, and Abby's is fast.
Well, let me ask this last question. Let me ask you all. As women, sometimes we just do everything for everybody else but us. And so if there was a woman, maybe midlife or older, is there a certain age that you should start cycling, or are you ever too old to start cycling? Or
Today.
weigh in on that, because again, that's what I hear from a lot of women too. I'm too old. I can't get on the bike. I don't.
You start
I'm
today.
not a young chick anymore.
I don't think there's a certain age. I mean, assuming somebody is generally in good health. But one thing I have seen happen, and this kind of goes with people getting on bikes for the first time, and this is not against anybody's spouse or boyfriend in here, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody whose partner cycles all the time. They decide they really want a bike, and then that partner puts them on a totally inappropriate bike. And they can't ride hills because they have this, the racing
Compact.
gears, and they'll say, "Oh, you're so strong," and I'm like, "No, I have gears," And so again, I think, women just if they're starting out later, they really need to buy something that's appropriate, one, to what they want. What are they going to use it for? We had a friend that went into a bike shop this week and said, "I want a kickstand on my bike," and she was told, "Oh, you don't want a kickstand. I don't think you should put a kickstand on that bike." Not didn't say, "Why do you want a kickstand?" What do you. So that's what I would say is talk to a lot of people and talk to women.
Yeah, and that's key. This is so important. I mean, as women, just like the story you just shared about the kickstand. If you want a kickstand, as women, because we have a tendency, ladies, I'm in a male-dominated profession. And I'm telling you, as women, you have to, I'm not saying we've got to be mean and all this and that, but you have to speak up. If you want a kickstand, it may not be the proper thing to do. The real cyclists don't have kickstands. I don't care. I want a kickstand on my bike. I might look like whatever, but I want a kickstand. And we have to hear other women say that. You're still a cyclist with a kickstand on your bike. That's what
Exactly.
I told them. Yes, this is an expensive bike with a kickstand, because that's what I wanted. So we have to do
And I
it.
know some women aren't as physically fit as probably, going out on a road bike. They're not going to go out on a road bike. Well, that's fine. If you can afford an electric assist bike, there's your answer. My answer, when did I get mine? 2.5 years ago. And, I basically thought, I can't go up hills anymore, so I'm changing my bike.
Yeah.
and, you know, it's an absolute wonderful machine that I have, and I'm really glad that I, you know, made that decision. I was financially able to make that decision, so it made it a lot easier.
I mean, I'll give Bike Walk KC or Ride KC a shout, though. It's like, I think is the whole fleet e-bikes at this point, and it's just like the correct, yeah, okay. 90% of the fleet is an e-bike, and that is what would have, I also have an e-bike for my like commuter bike, and it's like in Kansas City in the summer, what you want is an e-bike if you don't want to like basically just sweat all over the place. But it is just like, it goes back to what you were saying, Martha, about like choose what you want to do. Like in those situations where the e-bike works for me, it's like, I don't want to be going fast. I want, I need to look like I can, I don't know, I'm not a sweaty mess for a meeting or whatever. Whereas there are other times where I do want to go out and get my heart rate up and do something for my physical health too. So, but there's just such a big difference in like knowing what your end goal is, which I think people when someone's encouraging you to get into cycling, they have their end goal in mind. And then it's hard to push back and say, okay, I can tell this is important to you and it is not working for me. Can we ride in this other way? Can we do something else together, but still be on the bikes? Because I think, that's the first time I rode on a bike. It was with my now husband. I can't remember if we were married or not, but I don't know. Many a Kansas City cyclists will know Choteau from the East Bottoms up to Independence Avenue. So that was the first ride that I'd ever done on my bike, and I was crying mad at him by the time I got to there. And it's like, if I didn't have, I think I'll give a shout out to a woman named Stacy Tyndall, who I think was on that ride, and she was there, and my husband is like, makes it all the way up this hill, doesn't work for me, no shade, but it's just like, I was having a terrible time, and it's like, if I hadn't had someone there encouraging me to say, it gets better, and you can get better at this, there is and I think at that point I had signed up to do the MS 150 at the end of the summer. So it's like, no, I have to stay on this bike. This is a really long-winded way of saying, be the cyclist you want to be. But yeah.
And let me ask you, Abby, how can we get more girls and young girls and children to ride their bikes? What advice would you give to get more children out on their bikes?
I would probably,
Speak loud enough so they can hear you.
I would give them things that they can do after they learn to do the bike.
After they learn how to ride the bike?
Yeah, how to ride the bike, and they can do all these fun stuff when you ride a bike.
Like what's an example of what I should do after I learn to ride a bike?
You can go faster instead of
You can go
slow.
fast.
I'm sensing a theme with you.
And you can learn how to go longer miles and stuff.
You can learn to ride more miles or further.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think I heard you say, Abby, that one of the best things about riding a bike is it's just fun, right? You like to have fun, right?
Yep.
And riding a bike, what a way to have fun. So for no other reason, if they want to have fun, get on a bike, right?
Yep.
All righty, all right. So at this time, we're going to open it up for questions.
And while we open it up for questions, I'm going to pass a mic around, if that's okay. Angela, may I take you?
Absolutely.
Yours is the wireless.
Okay.
And so,
Well, can you take this off? Wait, hold on. You should be able to. Yeah.
okay. All right. So we're going to start with questions. We've got about maybe 10 minutes for questions, and then we're going to finish up with Laura's going to round us out for the night with some sneak peeks at what we've got going on coming up. Thank you so much, all of you. This was wonderful. We have known Martha and Sandra and Ellen and Angela for a long time, and we're just getting to know Abby a little bit more here in the bike walk world. And we're so glad they all came with us tonight. So I think that one of my first questions, if I can start out, and then I'll get, oh, wait, Amy has a question? Okay, well, I'll start out with a question, and then Amy will follow up, and that will give the rest of you some time to think about it. So my first question is, what kinds of encouragement did you receive from your friends as you talked a little bit about how your bike life has changed, whether that's going through different life cycles. Ellen, you've got a 2-year-old?
Yeah, he's 2. He'll be 3.
2-year-old. You've gone through, relationships and ending relationships and jobs and ending jobs and, adding and subtracting from your families. What encouragement have you received from your friends about how to change your biking to adapt with that, if that makes sense? So if you have received good advice from friends with kids, or if you have received good advice about how to work out your emotions on a bike.
So I cycle with my kid now. It's been a very much a transition into how I used to cycle, because you can't go very fast when you have a toddler on the back of your bike. You shouldn't go very fast with a toddler on the back of your bike. I think for me it was just people saying you can still do it, and seeing the other role models out in the world. So the Eric Bunches of the world with his 3 kids, and the people just on the trolley track every day. It's just that constant reminder that it's possible. The equipment's there, and you have to figure it out as a parent, which is some of the scariest things you're ever gonna have to do is whatever that next new thing is as a parent. I've never done this, and I've never done it with this kid, and so how do I get out on that bike? So I think just seeing it happen and knowing that it exists is a big part of it. I mean, I used YouTube a lot. My experience is unique in that sense because I was learning all of this during a pandemic, so I couldn't rely on that in-person advice as much as I would have loved to. But it's out there. Their whole parent cycling YouTube channel is out there talking about here are the 10 best bike seats, and here's why this one is good, and here's for this, and here's why that one's good for that. And so it's the information is out there once you have the gumption to try and to find it. I think it's just kind of what you started with. It's it's important to see someone who resembles you, who mirrors you doing what you want to do. If you don't have that whatever that gene is in the human race, where it's well, I'll do it by my own. So that's my answer. Say it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am curious. I rode bikes all my life, but I am curious or intrigued more by this long distance biking and how you sort of push from just maybe moving around town to doing something more longer or more like a trip, or how was that step and how do you plan for that?
Well, I think there's several ways to approach it. I mean, for me, I did some week-long tours. That was probably my foray into, it's like BAK, Bike Across Kansas, and you're riding every day. So you kind of go, oh, I could ride every day for 70 miles and do that. But for me, the big thing was having a friend, Carolyn, who had done it and said, come on, you're going to do this. And she taught me everything. So I think if you're starting out absolutely on your own, it's very helpful to be with somebody who has experience. That being said, I've met people out there who just took out, but there's a lot of aspects to it. I mean, there are some people that plan their own route, but you can also buy routes, and again, there's just a ton of information on the internet. On Facebook there are groups. There's Crazy Guy on a Bike, that any place you want to go, you can get all the blogs. So, but I would definitely, and people who will tell you, what kind of equipment you need. But talk to people who have done it is probably where I would start.
And are you thinking too about kind of going from riding around town to even just riding 40 or so miles, or is it more like the touring like Martha's talking about, or both? 'Cause, like, there's tons of rides around Kansas City.
So as far as for what, I had an incentive to tour because I was told I could go to Paris. And so, I mean, I think that Martha and I took a tour from Quebec City to Montreal that summer, you know, to try and work up to touring in France. And I think we were in France and we were in Belgium that year, you know, but the point was I was going to get to go 5 days in Paris, so I thought, okay, I know I can do this.
Yeah.
Did we misunderstand your question? Were you asking?
No, I think that's it. I guess, you know, I'm new to Kansas City, and so just like knowing where to ride, where to do it safely, like, you know, but I also so admire somebody that just goes on a trip to Europe and rides the bike. That sounds amazing. So
It's
you know,
much
just like-
safer in Europe.
It's so much safer in Europe. I would say too, though, if you're just looking for like longer rides, it's like, so Strava, just like look for people who are on Strava who are like doing their own rides. There's some really good ones. And then isn't it cyclekc.com? Something like that. And they've got the calendar of, there are like 5 rides a night. If you want to start riding with a group of people, like going out longer distances like that, and those are really typically you might want to like try before you buy, just to like make sure you find the group that's right for you. But
Well, and
like,
I think
there's
they
tons.
used to be rated, so they would tell you the average speed, because some of them are like, you know,
Yeah.
fast.
Some of them are like they want to train to go even faster.
Right,
So those are the
it's
rides
18
you'll
miles an
wanna
hour
find those
plus,
rides.
which is absurd in my
Yeah. No.
mind. I'm not
Never
going
in my
that
life.
fast.
Never in my life have I gone that average fast. But there's a lot, and I think there's a couple of women's rides that are starting to go around too. You're nodding. Do you know one?
There's one that's usually on Tuesday nights, actually, that starts in North Kansas City at Target there. That Kathy West is one of the leads.
Yes. Is that what's the Instagram handle? I know I follow it. Now I can't remember what it is.
There's 2 that are very similar, and I always get it wrong when
Okay.
I say it. But yes, there's
I will-
a Facebook group that
I will find it.
We'll compile resources as
Yeah.
a follow-up email to everyone, so you don't have to take notes. Well, yeah.
Yeah. But there are some really good groups around town.
The other nice thing about a group is that things then sort of snowball, because you meet people and they're like, oh, I also ride in this, and you start to get sort of connected or network with other rides, or with, and again, not everybody's gonna be compatible with your riding, but you're gonna meet people, and at least that's really happened for me. And a lot of people, you know, you met them here, but then you go to another ride, oh, I know you from this, and
You know, when I moved here to Kansas City, 11 years now, when I first moved, you know, my husband and I, we didn't know anyone, so we had gone to the Unitarian Church in Atlanta area, so we tried 2 different Unitarian churches here. We gave them each a couple tries, and finally on the 3rd try, Lori Chipman was a speaker, and she was speaking about biking in Kansas City. And they had a series where they had a speaker before the service, and so anyways, after that, then I said, well, forget the church, we'll just go to this Sunday Holy Rollers.
we call it bike church anyway.
Yeah. So I called it Holy Rollers is what we called it. So, you know, but that really helped. And I mean, I can't tell you how many people we met from that. And you know, people that we do things with, and, you know, other, you know, aspects, not just riding, you know, other social aspects.
Thank you all, but that was a great question, and thank you for the additional commentary. We have time for one more quick question. Amy, if you want to give yours, okay. One more quick question, and then I'm going to let Laura have it. Hold on.
I don't like talking to a microphone. You know, I rode bikes when I was young and into my 20s and 30s, and then had child and didn't ride for a while. And I have a problem. I've developed a tumor in this eye, so my vision is very limited in my right eye. And it's kind of disconcerting getting on a bike because I feel like it's just, my balance is not what it used to be too. So I don't know if there's some kind of remedial training that you can do. I remember when I learned to drive, it was in a parking lot. So I'm thinking, go to a parking lot and just ride around there because it's just going to be different, I think, than when I was younger. I had no problems with balance or anything when I was younger, so.
If you truly have a balance issue that that repetitive riding does not correct, it may not be safe, but there are trikes. You can get a trike.
Well, actually, my daughter has a trike, and even on that, it's not exactly the most stable thing in the world. It's when you go on a bump or something, it can wobble on you. But, and I actually have a group that I belong to that had an auction last year, so I was the highest bidder on a very nice bike, but I have not been able to get myself to ride it yet, so, yeah.
I think you would feel safe on a tandem bike?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
You just
but,
said trails right before this, didn't you?
Yeah, I was going to say, I have a friend who has a prosthetic in her right eye. Yeah. And so what we do is we just ride the trails. We haven't gone out. She wants to ride on the street. I don't feel comfortable yet because, she doesn't have that vision, and I tell her she can follow me, but not on the streets. Yeah. So we just kind of hit the trails and just ride on bike trails.
Well, yeah, in the neighborhood I live in, there's not a lot of traffic, and there's a little park that's pretty close, but I don't know, when I first got on it, I was like, I just don't know that I have the balance for it, so maybe I need training wheels.
Or it might just be like trying to do it again and again, like kind of that, just getting used to that really odd feeling.
My brother was telling me, just lower the seat as low as you can go, because,
Sure.
I feel better when
Feel
I
safer.
I was on the ground, but, so yeah, I plan on doing it, because I really enjoyed riding when I was younger, but it's just, I can have issues when I'm walking, even, because the, figure ground is not quite there, so, but, I'm not saying.
Good. That's the most important thing, not giving up. And so again, I want to thank the panelists for gracing us with their presence this evening. Thank you all for coming. And I wasn't on one of the panelists, and I didn't get to say who mentioned any of my role models, but Laura is one. She rides everywhere, all over Kansas City. So I'm gonna call Laura up at this time and close us out. Here, Laura, for the recording purposes.
Well, thank you all for attending. I do want to give some special thanks, obviously to our panelists and to Angela for moderating, but the Johnson County Library for sponsoring us. It's really exciting to bring the Women's Bike Summit back since 2018, and I am promising that it is a day where you will become best friends with your bike. So the intention is that it's never far from you. There's always going to be something you can do with your bike. Just a lot of dynamic workshops and learning opportunities for that day. But then coming up ahead of that, because we didn't want anybody to feel like, let's pick going to one session over a different session and maybe miss out on something. So that's why we're having these speaker series. And again, thank you to the Johnson County Library for helping sponsor these. And so, our next one that's coming up is actually Confident City Cycling. And so this is a really great workshop where we learn the rules of the road and the rights and responsibilities of cyclists. And so this is definitely information you can take whether you're behind the handlebars or behind the steering wheel. We also do on-bike practice of different skills. We put it all together with a really short ride with feedback from instructors, you know, who have been cycling for for a long time. And so that's a really great one. That one's coming up here in May. So in June, we have inclusive ride groups. So this is an opportunity to hear from a variety of women who ride for different purposes and get a chance to ride with them. So you'll bring your bike, you'll be able to hear them talk and be able to just kind of network through there. There is going to be a walk and read session here at the library. So it's happening in the park that's across the street or just at the back of the library. And so we welcome you guys to come. There is a bike themed book that's going to be displayed in the park. And so you can read and walk and maybe sit and enjoy some lunch or something out in the park. We have an exhibit coming called Home Street Home, and so what we do there is this is how you can learn the different elements that make up a safe street. And so it kind of asks you to look critically about what do you like about your neighborhood or your favorite street, and then how do you kind of move into action from there. In July, we're going to have a Bike Shop 101. So a lot of what I heard the panelists speaking of, you know, it can be intimidating to get into cycling. You walk into a bike shop, yeah, you ask for a kickstand and somebody looks at you weird, you know. So we are going to have some women who work in the industry come and really break down and help talk about figuring out the type of riding that you want. When you go and you speak to somebody at a bike shop, you know, how do you ask for what you're looking for, maybe not get oversold. And so that's always a really great one. Our keynote is still to be determined, but then we have our Women's Bike Summit, like I said, in September. We're bringing it back after so long. And so I really invite you all to take these little cards that are here. There is a little website on the back, and so that takes you to our website, to our Women Bike website. And so you can hear more information from there. This recording will be accessible afterwards. So, you know, if you know of any friends or you heard something here that you really liked, but you want to hear it again later on, you'll be able to access the recording. And we just encourage and invite you guys to come and keep checking out what we got. So it's going to be a whole lot of bikey fun. And yeah. And so, sorry. This is Amy, our development director, so I'm going to hand it over.
Just really quickly, I'm just adding on to role models, and I know, Laura, you are a role model for a lot of folks, but all of you are role models. There are so few, and we'll get statistics out in a follow-up email, there are so few women who cycle, and if you see it, you can be it. So you being visible on your bikes, riding as you are, riding as a plus-size person, riding as, like, we need to break down the stereotypes around what's feminine behavior. And, you know, this is, a lot of folks are afraid to ride because they don't want to mess up their hair. We really need to loosen up our standards, right? But really, we are all the role models. So you riding your bike on the trail or on the road, there is a woman or a young girl watching Abby, watching Ellen, watching Sandra, watching Martha, all saying, if they can do it, I can do it. And so every single one of you is a role model.
Thank you all.